The Pelicans season is starting soon, and I have three big reasons why you should be optimistic about the upcoming year, and it has to do with Zion Williamson, Dejounte Murray, and yes, head coach Willie Green. I'll explain in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Let's go.
You are Locked On Pelicans, your daily New Orleans Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On Pelicans, the daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Pelicans at NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, available wherever you get your podcasts and available on YouTube. I'm your host, Pelicans Insider, credential member of the media, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter, here with you on this Thursday. The show is Wednesday, Thursday, Friday this week. So this is the midweek show here of Locked On Pelicans. We'll be back to 5 days a week before you know it. But I don't know. I woke up feeling good today. Maybe it's a lucky day or something like that. But I woke up feeling very positive and excited about where this Pelican season could go. And there's three big reasons for that. Zion Williamson, Dejounte Murray, and yes, head coach Willie Green. We're going to break them all down in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And of course, thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcast and join over 10,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. Become an everydayer. That means you listen Monday through Friday to Locked On Pelicans. And if you're an everydayer, let me know in the comments down below. So three big reasons why you should be optimistic about the New Orleans Pelicans this season. I want to start with the obvious one, Zion Williamson, right? This is always the reason. We've definitely done this segment, this show before, buying into the Zion Williamson hype, but look, it gets me every single time, and it's gotten me again. He's in China right now with the Jordan brand, doing just looking good, living life, having some fun out there, I think, and it's great to see. This looks like a guy who's taken another evolution, another step forward, and that's what we've been waiting to see from Zion Williamson. And while it hasn't come as quickly as we would have liked, every year it seems like he's added a little bit more and added a little bit more. LeBron James was not LeBron James in year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5. It took a little while for him to invest in his body with the amount of money that he does, to take it as seriously as he does. And once he did, you saw him just leap another level. He was already at a pretty high level. But Zion is slowly but surely getting there. Would we rather have it been sooner? Yes, but I'll take it now. Better late than never. And he's still young. So Zion just looking like he does is exactly what we want to see. He was great last year. Struggled at the beginning of the season when he wasn't in the best shape of his career, was healthy but not in the best shape. And then after that, lost to the Los Angeles Lakers in the play-in tournament. We did an angry cast after that, the disaster of a loss. Something like a switch flipped. He started playing defense at a higher level. He was stacking extra days, extra workouts to get in better shape. And you kind of saw him turn his year around. Zion Williamson averaged 23 points per game, 6 rebounds, and a steal per game. Defensively, in 0.7 blocks, he was really good. So you're going to get that level of defense from him to start the year. He's looking trim, looking strong still, but looking like he dropped some weight, looking in shape, because you don't just get that way for no reason. And if he comes in and on game one, opening night against the Chicago Bulls, he looks that good, this is going to get the Pelicans off to a better start for the year, where they have the ability to get some really good wins, easy wins early on, not drop games to teams that, frankly, you should beat. If they do that, that's going to put them only in a better position for when the schedule gets tough. And I believe that with Zion Williamson being healthy and having a little bit less wear and tear on his body because of the shape that he's in, that takes his team far. More so than anything else we will talk about, or anything else we could talk about. More than any other factor for the Pelicans, Zion matters the most. It's really that simple. You can build an offense that works without him, and Dejounte Murray is a little bit of insurance for a Zion Williamson injury, but that's still not going to be as good as an offense with him. And even though he had that good year, he didn't shoot at the rim nearly as well as he has in the past. And that was teams just weren't going to let him be the one that beat him. So his shooting percentage at the rim was slightly lower than what it was a year ago. Now, it was still incredible. In the restricted area, 0 to 3 feet, 71.7%. That was his field goal percentage there. The year before, it was 72.1. So it's minuscule, but there is a difference. And the thing, though, we've seen with Zion is he's added a little bit more to his game. You're seeing him take some mid-range jumpers. You're seeing him attempt a couple of more threes as he tries to do that. And that'll work. It's all you really need, just a little bit. But we want him getting to the rim more so than any other things. And now you have a guard that you can run the pick and roll with him. You have shooting in Trey Murphy, Herb Jones. Murray launches threes. Adding more shooting around him is exactly what you need. You have kind of set him up for some pretty incredible success. If Zion struggles, that's kind of on Zion, but we're not expecting that right now. He's going to have lineups where he plays with shooters. There's going to be lineups with him at the 5. All of those things should allow him to succeed. And if Zion Williamson is succeeding, this team will succeed as well. Right? It begins and ends to an extent with Zion Williamson, and I'm pretty optimistic looking at the shape he's in. I'm buying the hype. I do this every year. I've been let down and disappointed before too, but I absolutely believe that he is going to have, another all-star year, maybe even make an all-NBA team, because he was close to it, very close to it at the end of the year, and he proved that he can be healthy. There's a little bit more harmony with him, the training staff, the coaching staff in the front office than there's ever been before. He looks bought in more than he ever has been, that he's just happy to be here. All of that leads to, I think, a really good year. And this team won 49 games. And who knows? I don't think they beat the Oklahoma City Thunder in the playoffs, but who knows what it might be if he plays in that series and what it looks like for Brandon Ingram. Though I don't know if a ton changes for Ingram in that, but it definitely changes a little bit at the very least. So with him in the shape that he's in, and all of the other things, if he can improve his handle a little bit, that's what I want to see, maybe more so than anything else from him. This team's going to be in really good position to win some games. And speaking of winning games, a person who's going to help him do it in a variety of ways that you probably don't even realize is Dejounte Murray. And I'm really excited for his addition to the team because it really fits what this team was looking for. We're going to break that down coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, but we've got something a little bit different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game, and all you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel at any time. So go to FanDuel.com, download America's #1 sportsbook. 2 options for you. Saints opening game, Derek Carr breakout season, feeling good about them taking on the Carolina Panthers, take them on the money line. The opening night lines for the Pelicans and Bulls for the entire NBA season is already out. I kind of like the Knicks to upset the Celtics on opening night. I like the Pelicans to beat the Bulls. You can do a parlay with both of those right now. Go make a $5 bet for the future and get your 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket. Visit FanDuel.com and download America's #1 sportsbook. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. Now for your second listen, Locked On NBA, especially on Wednesdays, because I'm on there every single Wednesday with John Krause of Locked On Celtics, covering all of the biggest stories. We talked a lot about Brandon Ingram on Wednesday's show. You should definitely give that a listen. Locked On NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Offseason never stops in the NBA. We cover it on Locked On NBA 5 days a week, even this deep into the off season. So let's keep talking about reasons to be optimistic for the New Orleans Pelicans. Zion's a big one. Big one. Other guy, though, that I think is going to really help this team in a variety of ways is Dejounte Murray. I think this guy is going to be so important for this team. And you're already seeing it with the leadership, right? This team has just kind of needed that strong leader, and they haven't been able to find it. You know, they tried with JJ Redick in Zion's rookie year that didn't quite work out. You know, you've tried it with Jonas Valanciunas, Steven Adams, some of the centers that were more experienced. Murray, you know, you've got it with CJ McCollum, but he's not kind of that vocal, like in your face, like bit of a jerk kind of guy like Dejounte Murray is. So the leadership number one is a big thing. They've just needed someone to kind of bark at these players a little bit. And I think you've got it. And I think that's a nice kind of balance with him and Willie Green doing that, sort of like leading in a way. More than anything, though, I think Murray supercharges the Pelicans defense. And here's the thing. The defense was already good. 7th best defense last season. And Murray is going to supercharge this even more. Now, no longer, if Herb Jones is in foul trouble, are you worried about the defense, because you've got Murray who can press the point of attack, that can play on the perimeter. 2 guys that can lock down opposing backcourts and wings. Love that. One of the ways that the Pelicans really like to play defense is by not allowing guys to get into the paint. Because what they did last year is not do great when it came to teams shooting at the rim. When opponents shot at the rim against New Orleans, they did a pretty good job. New Orleans was 4th worst. Team shot 68.1% against the Pelicans at the rim. Look, they don't have a shot blocker that we trust, at least right now on this team. Misi's not ready for that. Carlo's probably not ready for that role. Tice isn't a shot blocker. You know, I've spoken a lot, and we did it last week, talking about Trey Jemison. Maybe he does, but he's not really a shot blocker. You know, that's a guy you just don't want to trust the rim protection on this team. Well, the way you avoid that is by not letting him get to the rim in the first place. The Pelicans were 10th in terms of just not allowing teams to get to the rim. 10th in terms of frequency. Teams got to the rim against New Orleans 31.6% of the time. You know, the worst team in the league was 37.6%. So they're being in the top 10, while not directly a form of rim protection, is still rim protection. You know who's not going to let guys get past him is Dejounte Murray. Simply just adding a guy on the perimeter. Look, CJ's a defensive liability. So is Jordan Hawkins. Those guys are getting blown by, and teams were attacking the rim, and that's where New Orleans falls apart. You don't get beaten. You don't need rim protection in the first place, or at least you need it less. Murray helps with that. The other thing is he is elite at forcing steals. The Pelicans ranked 3rd last year in steals per game at 8.3. And in fact, they turned teams over about 13% of the time last season. That was 5th best in the league. There's no reason that that shouldn't be number 1 this year. If they turn teams over the most, they can get out in transition and run, and that's where this team can be very deadly. Now, they ran a lot last year. They were pretty good when it came to transition and getting out and just doing it in terms of like frequency to an extent, but they weren't particularly efficient at it. So while they got out a lot, it wasn't like you were making the most of each of those opportunities. And in fact, New Orleans, where'd the numbers just go, scored the 9th most fast break points per game, 15 per game, but they weren't efficient at it. So that 15 can jump up. They could, in theory, lead the league in fast break points per game. Toronto did it at 18.7, so it's a 3 to 4 point increase. And that might not seem like a lot, but 4 more points per game for this team, just by getting better in transition, right? Not even generating more opportunities, significantly increases them. Based on the Pelicans' points per game and opponents' points per game and offense and defensive rating and net rating, they graded out as a 52-win team last year. They had 49 wins. They underperformed based on their stats. Say they don't underperform again, but just maybe you can increase their offensive rating by a little bit. 2, 3, 4 points per game, puts you into 55-win territory. There is a blueprint or the ability for the Pelicans ceiling to be a 55-win team next year. In the West, realistically, that won't happen. In the West, it's going to be tough. You know, they're going to have some growing pains, and, you know, there's things that might hold them back, questions of fit with some players, and, you know, all that stuff. But Murray being able to force more turnovers, or at least just being better in transition than some of the other Pelicans guards, makes them a better team both offensively and defensively. And that's going to elevate them significantly. So him not allowing teams to get to the rim, him getting in transition and scoring in transition off of the turnovers that he's going to force, just amplifies the Pelicans up even more. It supercharges them in a way, and I think that Murray can be the catalyst for that kind of transition is not the right word. Change is what I'm thinking of for the Pelicans this coming year. I really love the acquisition of him. Look, Ingram said he needs a point guard. They gave you a point guard too. That in theory helps Brandon Ingram by going, okay, we listened to the excuse you made. Here you go. We've addressed it. You know, Murray fits in so many ways, and that's not even getting into clutch situations. Clutch situations where this team struggled last year. Now, Murray has done it before. I wouldn't say he's incredible in clutch situations. I don't know truly if anyone is other than like Damian Lillard, where you're like, yeah, I trust that dude. Everything else, in my opinion, the sample size is too small, and you don't really know if it's noise or what have you. But Murray's going to help there. Right? And as we've said, there's a little bit of insurance built in with him should Zion Williamson go down. If Zion went down before, the team just kind of fell apart last year. Now with Murray, who can just organize everyone, help with some of the crunch clutch situations, that's going to elevate this team significantly. So he helps on both offense and defense. And while I know defensively he was not good with the Atlanta Hawks, I do think he's going to revert to a lot of the form you saw in San Antonio when this guy was an absolute machine that was near a triple-double level guy. I think you're going to see that version of Murray here, and I could not be more excited to see him on the court with the Pelicans for the first time and see what they're going to do and how they're going to use him and how truly he's going to help. A guy like Karlo Markovic, I think, is going to really benefit from a guy like Dejounte Murray being able to run the pick and roll with him because we saw him do that in Summer League pretty well. Murray fixes a lot of what the Pelicans needed. It doesn't directly help with rim protection. That was the other thing we wanted to see them upgrade. They drafted Yves Missi, who's raw and in theory provides it, but probably not this year. But hey, at least you added another perimeter defender that doesn't allow his man to get by him and get to the rim. And that in itself helps with some of the scoring attempts for your opponent at the rim. I won't call it rim protection, but you get what I'm trying to say. Murray fixes a lot of that, or at least helps with some of that, even if it doesn't like get you blocks that you'd like to see. But if you can force turnovers, and he can do that, the Pelicans can get out and run. And that's what I want to see them do this year. They did not do that off of steals a ton last year. They really did it off of live boards. But if you can get in transition off of steals more, which Murray should do by being on the perimeter. It's a lot easy to get in transition off of a steal when you force it at the three-point line of your opponent, and then you've got a shorter distance to run, and guys who are down low can't get tracked back and do it. If you get that steal below the basket, the perimeter players are trying to hustle back really quickly, and you don't have those running opportunities, those fast break opportunities. Now, by forcing a turnover on the perimeter, sign me up for that, and I think that's what Murray is going to provide. Not saying Pelicans are winning 55 games, but you can see kind of the underpinnings of a 55-win team. If you look closely, if you squint a little bit, you can see that. And, well, again, the Pelicans, I don't think, get there. There's the makings of that. There's reasons to be really optimistic about this team, even if they don't truly have a center that you feel good about, because they've addressed other areas that help mitigate and minimize the damage that the lack of a center could do. And now head coach Willie Green. No complacency for Willie Green, in my opinion, this coming year. And I'll explain why. And it has to do with David Griffin. That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast covering everything you want to know about this New Orleans Pelicans team. If you're an everydayer, let me know in the comments down below. We'll be back to a more regular schedule next week. I want to do something a little bit fun with y'all next week and the rest of the off season. I even want to do a fan show where we might do a couple of quick little fan interviews here as well. If you're interested, let me know. We'll get you on the show here. I think we're going to have some fun with all of that. So fun next week. We'll look at Murray a little bit more in tomorrow's episode, more on the defense. I wanted to kind of touch on him today. But like I said, I woke up in a very positive mood. What's making me positive is I think the Saints are also going to win on Sunday. How they're going to do that, go listen to the Locked On Saints podcast. Ross Jackson breaking down the injury report. Taysom Hill, if you're a fantasy guy, being officially moved to tight end instead of QB, that's really good too. He's got everything covered when it comes to the black and gold over at the Locked On Saints podcast. Make that your second listen, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So as we wrap up Locked On Pelicans here and reasons for optimism, Willie Green. A lot of people aren't optimistic about Willie Green. I don't think he's one of, the bottom 10 head coaches in the league. I don't think he's one of the top 10 head coaches in the league. If you want to hear a top 10 coach talk, go to the Locked On Celtics podcast. My Locked On NBA partner, John Corrales, got Joe Mazzulla on there, and that dude is like insane in the most fun way. Go listen to the clip he has about like the whales and the food chain and all of that, which is just kind of wild to hear a coach talk like this, but you can see how that would resonate with players. Him talking about how he's excited to have a bullseye on him as the defending champions and he wants to see the laser put on him. It's a pretty incredible interview. Definitely go give that a listen over the Locked On Celtics podcast. A coach can make a difference. Mazzulla is one of those guys that does. So it's time for Willie Green to grow. And look, we've seen Willie Green as a little bit of a stubborn head coach, sticking with his kind of guys, the Willie Green kind of guys, going too defensively versus offense, maybe because it had to do with his playing career, whatever it is. We've seen some issues with that, with the rotations, with the starting of Larry Nance Jr. in the second half instead of feeding a guy like Jonas Valanciunas, all the above. And I don't think feeding Jonas was the answer to really anything for New Orleans last year. But there's definitely been some need for improvement when it comes to the head coach. And the good news is head coaches improve too. And it's not always linear, just like it's not always with players. See Zion Williamson is a good example of that. But I think you're going to see some big differences from head coach Willie Green this year. And I think it comes from David Griffin, and that message is going to be sent down. David Griffin at the end of season media availability said, we've tried to stick with some consistency, and we've seen that didn't work. We've seen enough of it. It's time to change. It's time for change. And first and foremost, we thought that would start with the players, bringing in Dejounte Murray, trading away Brandon Ingram, which hasn't happened yet. And maybe they will, maybe they won't. But I also think it means for the head coach as well. Look, Willie Green's got to make some changes because some of the issues you see, the lack of playing time for young guys, and I don't think they should play Messi to start with. At times just kind of like making change just to make change, which I don't believe in that, right? We saw that with the play-in tournament a couple of years ago against OKC when he played Kyra Lewis Jr. when Kyra hadn't played in a month, and that was the first guy off the bench, and you're kind of going, what? We've seen some issues with that. I think that stuff's going to be different this year because David Griffin likes to kind of have his hand on the team. He inherited Alvin Gentry, moved on from him, hired Stan Van Gundy. That didn't work. And he picked Willie Green, I think a coach that, he could have some more influence on than some of those other guys. So I think you'll see some messages being handed down from the front office and to others to the coaching staff about who they need to play and some of the combinations that you want to see. And I think they're going to be a little bit more involved with all of that, whether that's an analytics-based approach or what have you. I think you're going to see them really give him some creative ideas, and I think you'll see him put those into action, and I think he's willing to listen to that. This is someone who is very good with the players and connecting with the players, and that is, in my opinion, one of the most important things that a head coach can do. But getting some help elsewhere, I think, is going to be an important thing. They've kept James Borrego. That's a great thing to be able to see as well because we do think of him as a good offensive mind. Having him take a strong role with the team this year in his second year, I think is going to be good. And they need that. And look, Murray helps with this too. You don't need to run as many defensive guys out there when one of your lead guys, one of your main high usage guys, isn't a negative on defense. And Murray isn't, and that's going to help them. And that means you can lean a little bit more offensively. Does that mean that maybe you can play Jordan Hawkins more if he's paired alongside Dejounte Murray? Because it's not Hawkins and CJ McCollum, which defensively had issues. Hawkins and Murray, one of them is going to have defensive issues, but the other one makes up for it, and at least your backcourt isn't like a sieve. Same thing with Murray and CJ McCollum. It unlocks different lineup combinations that I think you're going to see Willie Green go with more because he trusts Murray, and Murray seems like a Willie Green kind of guy. So I'm excited to see Willie Green grow and make some changes, and that's going to help the Pelicans win. That's going to help the Pelicans come back in games. Look, the data was there that, if you couldn't come back from a double-digit lead in the second half, or, deficit in the second half because of, any time at any point, well, then you got to make some changes to your approach. And there's enough data from this past season that I don't think you let Willie Green make those same mistakes again. So maybe it's not Willie Green's growth, but it's others kind of getting through to him or kind of like imposing on him. Whatever it is, don't care. As long as it helps you win the games, that's the most important thing to me. And I think you're going to see those kind of changes this year. Those are three of the biggest reasons why I'm optimistic about this team. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Is there another reason you're optimistic? Are you optimistic about Brandon Ingram? Are you optimistic about a trade that could even change this team more? Are you optimistic about the leap that Trey Murphy could take? Let me know in the comments down below. So more on the defense, because I think it's going to be important for the team next year. What are like the best lineups they can run with that? We'll look at that in tomorrow's episode of Locked On Pelicans. We'll get a little bit more regular with the schedule next week on Locked On Pelicans. After that, I think the first week we're going to go back to 5 days a week is going to be September 16th. So 5 shows the week of September 16th in the lead up to Media Day and all of it. I'm excited. I hope you're excited too. I hope you're along for the ride on Locked On Pelicans all season long. As always, I'm your host, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. This is the Locked On Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I'll see y'all tomorrow.